One gets underway. I'm really looking to see who's going to be stepping up on this one, Nagura. We've seen Deplete from Beyond and the boys have strong performances over this weekend, but I'm not really sure who's going to be able to pull out the series.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Deplete from Beyond play against Perplex. They did lose that matchup, but Perplex just had an incredible fast time as well, as they were close to 14 minutes. So I think Deplete from Beyond definitely does have a good strategy. The boys we haven't seen at all in Freehold yet. Seems like both of them are running the exact same lineup though. So we see one Hunter, one Rogue, one DK. Interesting to see that there's a Rogue, very likely because of the explosive, but also because you need to go ahead and trigger that Ring of Booty event preemptively to not lose any time later.
That's right, both of the teams pulling bosses around the exact same time. Seeing a little bit more trash percentage taken care of onto the side of the boys compared to Deplete from Beyond. Overall, not too terribly serious of a difference that we've seen so far. Watching the teams split up at this point, and probably going to be expecting the Hunter to do a lot of the baiting. And one of the things I remember seeing from previous seasons when we started seeing more Mistweavers coming out, for example, Hunter really wasn't that meta, so you didn't have anybody else to start running out and baiting any of the iguana that would come out from the bird. So you'd have like your Mistweaver just sitting out there, and we'd sometimes also have the rest of the druids. And it would be so stark of a difference to see how much damage you lost by having your healer running out and not being able to be in melee full time.
Yeah, definitely. Just having the Hunters, especially Freehold, just one of those dungeons where so many things need to be baited by a ranged person. So the Hunters definitely make the job of the healer a lot easier, and it's also just an overall damage increase, as you mentioned. And now we see Deplete from Beyond, sorry, Deplete from the boys. They pulled some
the boys, or
they pulled some trash on top of Sky Captain Crag, which probably will make up for the percentage that they're behind compared to the boys. So this is going to be a very even matchup still, as the percentage of the boss is very equal, and with this trash going down, they're also going to be equal in enemy forces.
That's right, they're just making sure they're getting themselves caught up. We are having a little bit of lag issues right now, my friends, so we are going to be working on that to get it all fixed up for you, but it's not impacting the players at the moment. It's just going to be from the broadcast side, and we'll be working on that as quickly as we can. Deplete from Beyond and the boys tied up and just, once again, running in tandem together as they're both about to be killing the first boss on this one. Are you expecting to see some more of the obelisk kites that we've seen out of a couple of teams so far? It's been a really big risk, but I guess we have to see if, I guess they're going to clear out a lot of space in Harlan Sweets Island.
Okay, so we've seen different kind of strategy this time around with these new affixes here. We've seen the kite strat come out of... Oh, Eagle actually went down at the very last second here from a powder shot plus a pool spawning on top. Very unfortunate. Doesn't cost him too much time, right? Because he can immediately release as soon as the boss goes down. But it's still 5 seconds that matters when they're so close. So we'll keep an eye on that 5 seconds difference for later. But yeah, for the kiting strat versus non-kiting strat, I think when it's not bolstering or something like that that prevents you from pulling bosses on top of trash, then I think it's better to just do the awaken mobs with the boss if you're able to do all 4. Of course, it's very difficult to do, so if you're able to do that, I think it's better to kill them, because you can also pull trash on top and use the friendly fire from the bombardment to deal with the trash, and that's just so efficient, and that's something we have seen a lot in past MDIs.
We even saw it last week as well when it was bolstering, watching the team fully stop DPS just to make sure that they had all of the cannons aligned properly. That was always a treat to see, but now we got a massive pull coming in from Deplete from Beyond as the boys are working to get that same setup, but we're seeing Rads on the side of the boys getting harpooned over and over again as they finally get the same setup rolling here, and we're going to be seeing Deplete from Beyond spiking first as Curie is just destroying these trash packs, and they're all gone! They're dead!
Where did it go? Where did it go? Either way, we see the boys also pulled a little bit of trash on top, but Chai actually going down, Buck going down as well. The ladder is really low. They don't have a bell rest. I mean, they have an engineering rest, but it takes a long time to cast that. And Rats is in trouble as well as he goes down. This is going to be a full reset coming in, or maybe even a full team wipe if Petco doesn't have a feign death ready. And yeah, that's a disaster for them. They didn't manage to finish off most trash, but the boss resets, of course.
It seemed like they had 3 or 4 mobs left remaining that just enraged and just overwhelmed the group on that end, you know? Especially when you have to deal with any of like the harpoons coming out, whenever you have to, have any of the ads just lingering around and just causing a lot of extra damage. Now they have to deal with this Enforcer, and as anybody who's scuffed skips or had wipes on Eudora or something like that, you know, having to deal with this Enforcer as you run back is just an absolute nightmare. Wastes so much time.
Yeah, definitely. They could have probably had the rogue pull it away and vanish, but they just didn't want to waste any time, and maybe they forgot that not everyone has got Shadow Melt ready in their group, or they didn't communicate it properly. Either way, they're gonna get slightly more percentage here from this Enforcer, but in the end still a huge time loss. As Deplete from Beyond, they're about to finish off Jolly and Raoul. They're close to 40% trash, so it's still similar in trash, but just one whole boss ahead at this point, and this Tyrannical, so those bosses take a long time.
They really do. And Deplete from Beyond, you know, accelerating on their lead. They're moving on their way to the Ring of Booty, so we expect them to be grabbing up most of these mobs and growing into the ring and getting some of the RP started for Lightning.
Yeah, that's why we saw earlier, I'm not sure if you guys saw, but we saw it that the rogues were actually leaving the first boss early. So before the first boss went down at approximately 5%, the rogues went away, they immediately stealthed over, they vanished off, they stealthed over to the Ring of Booty, started that RP event to be making sure that Lightning spawns, the pig spawns, and once Deplete from Beyond and the boys were dealing with the roll fight, the Dr. J was stealthing off again, dealing with that pig. The boys still have to deal with that since, of course, they had this whole team wipe coming in, so Naladra will have to do that on their side. But the Deplete from Beyond, they're already very low on Ludwig here. It is raging, so they want to make sure that the hunters dispel that raging effect of Ludwig, because Ludwig is a mini-boss and not a boss, and therefore he does rage as well.
Oh, and it very, very much hurts. And so that's what the nice thing, to start seeing the hunters get mixed in more. They drop the soothe effect onto Ludwig there and a couple of the other mobs. And that's one thing we've seen a lot of times, is that you don't need to soothe every single mob, but usually it's like one or two that are really going to start causing a lot of problems. They have high HP, they live a long time, they absolutely clobber the tank. All those different things are extremely important. As you're seeing, Tank Breaker going down on the side of Deplete from Beyond as it's around 30%, while the boys are just trying to catch up here. They're not being able to pull in tons of trash in with the boss at the moment. They do grab the Crusher and what little enemy forces remain, but they're just significantly behind at this point. They've had to do a lot of inefficient pulls. They're working on Raoul and Jolly at this point, and Deplete from Beyond is just going to be making the most of this advantage they've built for themselves with another massive pull before they get on to the Shark Puncher.
Yeah, this is a pretty huge pull they're doing here as well. One thing to note is that they also dealt with the Awaken mob with the Tank Buster. Now, this probably means that they're not doing the kiting strat, right? If you're doing the kiting strat, then you definitely just don't deal with any of the obelisks, and you have all four of them being kited by the healer. So if they killed the Tank Buster, that means they probably want to deal with the other three Awaken mobs and the last boss at the same time. Now they are engaging Troda with a bunch of trash on top. This can be dangerous just because of raging, right? And you see all of these explosives going off as well. Everyone dropped incredibly low, but they did recover now, and yeah, you just want to make sure you save your AoE CC specifically for low HP on the mobs when they're raging, like your Ring of Peace, your AoE stuns, because it can be very dangerous if you have nothing to stop them hitting your tank.
Absolutely, and I think a number of these times when we look at raging, it's really how quickly can you just obliterate the mobs, stun the mobs the second they enrage, have your tank have his defensives up so that they just do not die. And you see Rads again having more issues with these harpooners. He's dropping incredibly low, trying to wrangle all this trash together before they start going into Ludwig themselves and trying to make sure they can build some kind of foothold back in this game. As Trothek's going on to 55% on the side of Deplete from Beyond, and the boys just got to be careful at this point. We've seen how quickly the pulls can fall apart when enrages go out, when people start taking a bit of extra damage from those effects, and it just seems like they're not finishing off a lot of those mobs as quickly as we're seeing from Deplete from Beyond.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, also, at this point, they probably know that they're behind, that the other team did not wipe, and they had this full boss reset. So maybe they're even thinking about changing up their strategy. Maybe they planned on dealing with 3 Awaken mobs with the last boss, but maybe they're just gonna risk it and play all 4. Because that's probably the only chance they can realistically catch up, unless Deplete from Beyond has some sort of wipe coming in, or is just incredibly slow. So we'll see if the boys want to risk something like that and maybe just deal with all 4 Awakened mobs, because Deplete from Beyond, as we know, they already killed 1.
That's right, and I was seeing on the side of the boys just trying to be able to clear through the rest of the trash here as Trothek's about to be going down on the side of Deplete from Beyond, and looking at like how this series is also going to be shaping up is going to be pretty cool as well, since you mentioned Freehold's our first map, but Shrine and Underrot to follow. You got to look at, you know, some of the confidence as well when we're coming into like time trials, because Deplete from Beyond had a significantly better time, like 2 minutes ahead. So going into the series, even though Igloo went down, Trothek's about to follow. They're looking really poised in this series at the moment.
Oh man, Igloo going down again.
This is the second time. Yeah.
He died at the very last second of the boss fight. Again, not a huge time loss, but just 5 more seconds on the board. You don't want to see this happening, but in the end, it's a lot less of a time loss than if you, of course, see the 5 Zefs from the boys, which cost a boss reset. Either way, they are moving on now, using their Shroud to skip past some of these mobs, and it looks like they are engaging the boss now, so they're doing a very similar strategy to what we've seen from Perplex, where they engage the boss, deal with the Awaken mobs, and then use the friendly fire from the boss's artillery to deal with the trash that they still need.
That's right, they're wrangling them all together at the moment. I like how they pulled Harlan Sweet right onto the caster obelisk to make sure they get everybody in together. Looks like they're probably just going straight in as well, since they have all the cooldowns up. They've got Bloodlust to follow. They're popping absolutely everything to further just destroy a lot of these obelisk mobs. And with all the chaos that's going on here, right? You mentioned it's much better if you have the boss at a lower level of percent, so you have any of the artillery barrages going on every single player, so they can kill them more rapidly. But then you also just have Unholy DKs, and Unholy DKs will just wipe the floor with a lot of these mobs, and since you're popping everything on the pole anyway, you might as well.
Most definitely. We see one cast go through here from the Void Weaver on Igloo. He's got the curse, which does increase his cast time, but not a problem, as you can see him just spinning around, doing 100k HPS on the whole group. Did manage to finish off most of the trash. The only thing left is the Void Weaver to deal with, and the Void Weaver, even if some casts go through, it's not too dangerous as long as you're full HP, right? You can, of course, you can interrupt the cast so it doesn't go through at all, but if it happens, if you don't have any interrupts ready, then if you're full HP, it does not one-shot you. So as long as you have a defensive ready, and it's also, like, you also know who it casts on, so you can be prepared by using a defensive, for example.
That's right, and since they're all melee or all physical damage dealers, there's only one caster, and that's the healer, so all the lingering doubt casts are going to be going onto the healer every single time, so they're also able to expect it and anticipate it as well. So which is 94% trash left. They do have the option of grabbing extra trash packs in with the boss at the very end, like they do right now. Kind of early to pull the commander, but hey, at least they're at that 60% breakpoint, so they'll be able to quickly annihilate it. Looks like it was just waiting for the right patrol to be able to get some good value. So they get a really quick soothe out onto the officer, bring it down. They're at 100% trash, 45% left to go, and the boys just trying to be able to get back into this series, but not enough at the moment as they grab in all of these packs together. And they do drop a stun as well, and they interrupt the Ravager here.
And, I mean, even if the boys would have not had this vibe, I think it still would have been close, because Deplete from Beyond is such a fast strategy. I mean, they're at 14:06 now. We've seen Perplex finish this dungeon in 14:11, so they just very slightly behind Perplexed, and I think Method EU had 14:03 or something like that, or 14:05. Either way, Deplete from Beyond definitely having a really fast strategy here. The 2 deaths, of course, shouldn't have happened, but in the end, it wasn't a big deal. And yeah, Deplete from Beyond finishing off Harlan Sweet here, winning the first game to 1-0, and the next game will be Shrine, as you mentioned.
That's right, and the boys working together to try to get Bob to grab all of those mobs to kite all the obelisks away. Good strategy, but they just don't have the time, as Deplete from Beyond taking game number 1 in a convincing fashion.
Yep, that is going to make this series 1-0, and as this is best of 3, guys, they only need one more win to finish this off and send them forward in this bracket. Deplete from Beyond, pretty clean run, would you say, Dratnos?
Yeah, you know, there were a couple of deaths, but they were right at the end of boss fights, which is when it is the least impactful to have a death on your team, so Other than that, the run looked pretty clean, and it was, within 30 seconds of that time we saw from Perplexed, which, easy to imagine if those deaths hadn't happened, that would be around the exact same time.
Yeah, and there were just a couple of moments for the boys where it just kind of started to go wrong for them, Jack. Where could they have cleaned it up for them?
I think a lot of the pressure goes into how quickly they wrangle a lot of the trash mobs together. We saw on the side of Rads where it just took a lot of time for him to organize all the mobs after getting harpooned again and again, trying to bring all of the packs into Council of Captains, for example. And it seemed like once the mobs enraged, they just lingered around for a long period of time. We saw the same thing at the very end as they were making some space for Bob to start kiting the obelisk mobs. Once they grabbed in the commander, they ended up dropping a quick interrupt onto the Ravagers, which you don't want to be doing. Both Ravagers went off next to each other and at the same time, so a lot of mobs didn't get hit by the Ravager cast. We saw a couple like double debuffs, for example, go up onto them. So it seems like there's a lot of extra time being burned that increasingly lethal when you're in a Raging Affix.
Yep, and it looks like they did, as Siege is banned for the next map, they are going to be going to Shrine. So those affixes are going to be Fortified, Necrotic, and Volcanic. Nagura, what do you think about those affixes? What should we expect from these teams in this next game?
Well, Shrine was a time trial game map. And we've seen the number 3 seed come out of Deplete from Beyond, 16:55 on their time, while the boys got number 5 seed only, 18:22. So it is 1.5 minute difference between those two teams approximately. But both of the teams already played this match also on the tournament yesterday, and we saw a lot of struggles come in by Deplete from Beyond, having 7 deaths over the course of the game, losing to self-reliance on that shrine. So there's definitely a chance for the boys to win this, even though their time trial time was slower. And then I assume their strategy, if perfectly ran, it's also slower. But Shrine is just such a dungeon, so many things can go wrong, and so many bad wipes can happen where you just lose so much time.
Yeah, I mean, last time the boys did play this team, they beat Deplete from Beyond 2-1. So, Dranos, do you expect them to maybe be able to tie them back up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the boys definitely have some potential here. Even looking back into that Freehold we saw, like, I think things were going well for them in the first 5 minutes or so of the dungeon, first 3 minutes of the dungeon. They got, more trash count out of that first boss room. They were finished with the boss faster, and they didn't have a death there, so things were looking good for them at the start of last dungeon. If they could have kept that going, kept the execution high, I think they may have had a competitive time in the last dungeon in Freehold. In Shrine, there's a lot more that can go wrong than in Freehold. There's a lot more moving parts in Shrine, so I think that this is a dungeon where it's really going to test that out of both teams.
Do you think we'll see the new snapping strategy that we saw yesterday, or is it too early for that?
So this is the snap onto Lord Stormsong with the 12 enemies from the bridge. That was... Who was it who did that? That was... I think it was one of these two teams, but I cannot for the life of me remember which one.
Either.
Both of them played Shrines yesterday.
Deplete from Beyond, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So self-reliance.
Okay, so then
I believe we will
again.
see that. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to change their strategy. So yeah, Deplete from Beyond, we'll look out for that really cool snap into the third boss that I think it has been used a little bit before, but it's a rare strategy, and we're going to get to see them try and make it work again.
Do we feel like that saved time for them yesterday? Was that worth it?
No, not the way that it was executed yesterday. So yesterday it ended up, they had some deaths on that fight. They had, they lost a lot of uptime as a result of how they handled those mobs. But I think it has the potential to save them time if it's executed properly, yeah.
Well, hopefully they cleaned that strategy up. I mean, if they do, given the boys' performance, like if they do, Deplete from Beyond does pull off that strategy, that snapping strategy, like where is the boys going to be looking to get an extra edge, Jack? Where can they find that extra time?
I think the boys really just need to be able to step up here. We had, I think, pretty high expectations for the boys going into this tournament since they did place third before. They didn't do too well in the time trials here, but it wouldn't be the first time that we're seeing big mistakes being made from the favorable team or the most favored team in Shrine or even in other dungeons. They need to step up. They need to really watch a lot of these early deaths that they've been having, and they need to make sure they're in a position to be able to capitalize on any Deplete from Beyond mistakes.
Alright, so we're already in the dungeon here as we've seen both teams do this big snapping pull, as we've seen almost all the teams do so far, where you just gather up a bunch of caster mobs here in this first area. The tank jumps on this lantern and all the mobs snap to them. Rat's actually dropping pretty low as he's got a lot of necrotic stacks and no dwarf racial available.
That's right, as they're just grabbing everything together. Deplete from Beyond's already finished his pack. The boys are going a little bit stronger. The boys are doing a little bit different of a pull, excuse me. And they are going to be ignoring that obelisk. So they're just going straight in towards boss, while Deplete from Beyond is dealing with the first of the obelisks. They're dealing with the caster at this point. And the boys, Shadow and Skip, they're already on to Aquasur, as they're just going to start mopping up a lot of the early trash.
Yeah, and the boys actually committed Bloodlust for that very first pull, that snapping pull, while Deplete from Beyond chose to save theirs, I assume, for the boss. And one thing that is also very interesting is that Deplete from Beyond was playing Hunter plus double DK in their time trials, but now they switched out the Hunter for a Demon Hunter, presumably to have more AoE DPS for the Unholy DKs because of the magic damage increase they provide. But Hunters also do a lot more consistent damage by themselves, as we see the boys running that Hunter and double DK comp. I wonder why they chose to switch it up.
Part of it might be towards how much they're expecting to buff Unholy DK damage, how much more value they'd be able to get out of it. We'd seen, you know, a couple different times where it would be a Hunter versus Demon Hunter, and that would be the primary difference in composition in a lot of these really high trash density dungeons as well. So I guess it's going to be the idea. I guess it's the concept behind it, really. Deplete from Beyond and the boys doing very similar pulls, grabbing everything so they can start blasting Aquasur down as rapidly as they possibly can. The boys just a little bit of a time and trash advantage right at this point.
Yeah, and Deplete from Beyond now also using that Bloodlust on this incredible pull, where there's just so many casters here that we need to be careful about. One thing that is good about the casters, though, is that they don't actually apply necrotic to the tank because they don't melee hit. So that's a good thing that the tanks don't have to deal with that. Also, one thing to note, Rentari is playing Iron Dwarf, so he's got the same racial, basically, that also removes the necrotic stacks. It just has a different icon, and you can see the icons, the defensives and the offensive cooldowns underneath the player frames at the top.
That's right. As we're starting to shape up here, Deplete from Beyond getting into that intermission first before the boys. And I'm not really sure what that difference is that we've seen, but it keeps on happening where Deplete from Beyond is just able to neutralize the mobs faster. It seems like their DKs are just pumping more every single time that we start seeing some of these similar pulls. I'm not sure if there's just the burst from the DKs is just delayed on the side of the boys, or pulls are taking too long to really get together. But it's been pretty consistent at this point, as Deplete from Beyond's grabbing a couple of the extra trash mobs here and bringing them back into Aquasur, which is dropping very low right now.
Yeah, we saw Igloo do a pretty nice pull here on the initiates. A small little trick that most teams are doing, this is also something that we've seen on live servers a lot. These initiates, if you go to the left and you just walk slightly closer, like one step at a time, then you can pull the initiates, you can body pull them without actually engaging the mini boss. So this is why those teams are doing that, because you just get a little bit of extra count, and some teams just do not want to deal with Heldis. We've seen some other teams pull Heldis on top of Aquasur, but we've also seen teams wipe because they had that boss there, and this is Fortified, so the Heldis does do a lot of AoE damage when she casts her ability, so definitely not an easy pull to do on top of Aquasur.
Love the early cocoon coming in here, dropping it onto Rentari as Deplete from Beyond putting up another extremely large pull here, grabbing everything together and again just taking control of that rune that gets placed down by Rune Carver's Sorn. And that's all you really need at this point, is just to get as much defensive value as you can. Don't leave the rune, as you saw Clicks drop a little bit low the second that he stepped out. And this trash pull is almost done. You know, Sorn is probably gonna be the last one that is left alive, but they've done an excellent job here mitigating a lot of the damage, making sure that they had favorable positions just to sit back and avoid a lot of this, as the boys going for something similar right now, but you're just seeing Raz getting absolutely pumped at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like they were actually doing the exact same pull. It looks like they're doing it slightly faster, though. The Deplete from Beyond was struggling to finish off that pull because the ward on the floor decreases damage taken, not only for players that stand in it, but also for the mobs that stand in it. And it looked like Rentari had a little bit of a problem positioning the mobs at the very end, and they were standing in that ward, getting that damage decrease, and that's why it took them so long to finish off that pull. The boys, on the other hand, pulling even more trash on top just to make use of this ward. They pulled the trash from the outside in, while Deplete from Beyond finished off their pull inside and then moved out. So both of these teams neck and neck, and once they finish up this pull, they're going to be very equal in the trash percentage.
That's right, but Deplete from Beyond is going to be skipping their way past the Guardian Elemental in the center of the bridge as we speak, as Deplete from Beyond is just about to move into the same position. So this is what I was talking about. The boys are a little bit behind from Deplete from Beyond, but they're in a good enough position that they can very easily capitalize off of the first mistake. And when you're in Shrine of the Storm, it's kind of just a game of who is going to make that error first, who is going to be in trouble first, who's going to be having the earliest mistakes. And right now we haven't seen too much of a threat from Necrotic at the moment, for many of the reasons of just like grabbing very efficient pulls, like we saw out of Runecarver Sorn, for example, being able to stand in the mitigation field. I know on Brother Ironhall, his field will automatically remove Necrotic. I assume Sorn works the same way, but sometimes there's a lot of inconsistencies with those.
Okay, so this is an incredible pull coming out of Deplete from Beyond as they gathered up this whole room and also engaged the boss at the same time. Rentari had to use his Dwarf Racial almost immediately, but now he's out of the Racial, and look at the amount of stacks he's got already from Necrotic. They need to finish up this trash, and then Rentari somehow needs to drop these Necrotic stacks, else he's not going to be able to finish up this boss. Thankfully, the Initiates run away once they're low HP, so they're not going to apply any Necrotic anymore. And there we go, the ward did spawn, and he did manage to get rid of that Necrotic stack, but that was close. He had so many stacks on him.
Most definitely. And when you're going pull to pull, you're not having any of the racials at your disposal. You're just like, we need to hold on just long enough to be able to survive. And I'm sure they've had a number of times where they, have scuffed any of it in practice, go back, try again, and just absolutely grind it to perfection. Because the slightest mistake, the slightest bit of extra damage is just absolutely debilitating. And Tank's defensive power has grown so much this patch, but if you're just not able to push their health up, it doesn't matter how good your mitigation is.
There we go. The boys now also engaged the boss. It looked like they had reset it earlier. I'm not sure if it was an accident or whichever thing happened, but they now only engaged the boss. So definitely quite a bit behind to Deplete from Beyond, as they're already on 18% for both Brother Ironhall and Gale Colorfey. They're evenly cleaving them down, which does decrease the kill time. It makes it more... It makes it riskier to not finish up Gale Colorfey first, just because she's the one who constantly casts that AoE ability. If not interrupted, does AoE damage to everyone and stacks up a debuff, increasing damage from more slicing blasts. But if you evenly cleave them down, as you can see, you just have a faster kill time, and that's what Deplete from Beyond chose to do. Now they're moving on to the Obelisk, while the boys still fighting Brother Ironhall and Gale Colorfey.
Right, and significantly faster. I mean, Deplete from Beyond just working to make sure that they can continue extending their lead. And this is also the second obelisk that Deplete from Beyond is going to be dealing with. I don't think we've seen any just yet from the side of the boys. So at this point, we're just going to be looking to see how they're going to deal with some of those last obelisks. And so much of this dungeon just gets put on the end boss, and how well teams can perform there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. The difficulty with dealing with the Awaken mobs and also dealing with the boss's mechanics itself is just so incredibly difficult. We've seen so many teams just lose a player here or there, or even have complete team wipes coming in, because any small mistake there can cause either a death or a full team wipe. So definitely want to keep an eye on that last boss once they get there. But Deplete from Beyond is dragging that Awaken mob all the way to the bridge. There actually is a snapping spot where you can snap that Awakened boss on the bridge, but doesn't seem like Deplete from Beyond is using it. They just dragged it along and killed it as they went.
Yep, and the boys still working on Brother Ironhall right now. They didn't opt to cleave anything down, so at that point they just have to take a lot of extra time to be killing it. We are also seeing Deplete from Beyond running across the bridge. They're going to be ignoring those tentacles, so I guess they're going to be able to avoid some of the extra slam damage. I haven't really tested it to see if they're going to be able to completely avoid the range, I guess, of the tentacle slams, but they are going right into Lord Stormsong's hot tub, actually going near it. But they will be
Yeah, so
dropping
they're
the
actually
Shadow Meld
doing
really quickly.
They're doing a snapping pull, or that's what they did the last time around at least.
Yeah.
Let's see if they try. We see their first aid coming out of Rentari, healing himself up a little bit. These are the classic mechanics coming out.
Hey,
but now
there
we
we
see
go.
the snap happening as he jumps into the water, snapping all of this bridge trash on top. This is a very dangerous pull, and we've seen them struggle the last time and actually have a wipe come in here. But this time around, let's hope they can pull it off. They don't have Bloodlust available yet, and of course want to save it for the last boss anyway. But keep an eye on Necrotic, on Rentari, on the tank, because he's got no Dwarf Racial anymore. He's already used it. But all the trash is dead. Well, look at that. Look at that DK damage. Deleted the mobs.
Huge. And every time, I mean, that's what it's all about, is making sure that last dungeon, you kill the mobs before the raging overwhelms you. This dungeon, you know, do it before the Necrotic does. And Deplete from Beyond has done such a great job of having the burst when they really need it as well. Misty also ended up getting the debuff there. Really like seeing that transcend, so whenever he had to go down into Stormsong's hot tub to DPS himself, basically, he set up the transcend so that he wouldn't have to worry about swimming out at the proper time. And that's always a little bit of great utility to see. I love when Mistweavers get to use their transcendence more frequently.
Yeah, most definitely. We see the boys now manage to pull their Awaken up all the way up to the bridge as well. They're gonna end release now. They need a little bit less trash at this point, as Deplete from Beyond needed when they were here. So they don't need to do this whole bridge pack anymore, as we see Deplete from Beyond snapping onto the boss. They should be fine with only the Dwellers and then the last few percentage they can get in the last boss area plus the Awaken mobs. Deplete from Beyond, though, they did this pull a lot better than we've seen them doing last time around. They still have some trash alive, though, and Chaya going down, unfortunately, for the boys' side.
Yeah, Rad's about to go down, as well as Bob is just going to be sitting back to get the res on most of the party at that point. Very disappointing to see, as this is just what's going to be causing them to lag even further behind, as the last bits of RP are done for Lord Stormsong, so they're going to look to engage the boss quickly, but they're just taking considerably more time, and it's just adding up every single moment, right? Deplete from Beyond's at 84% trash. They're moving on into the last boss room. No deaths on the board, and looking smooth.
Yeah, so now we'll see how Deplete from Beyond handles this last boss area. Correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't seen Deplete from Beyond deal with many Awaken mobs. We've only saw them deal with one so far.
Two.
They did the Void
caster.
Weaver. Okay. So the
Yeah.
boys was the one that did not do the Void Weaver, correct?
That's right. So
Alright.
the boys are just now working on. Well, I guess the boys also used it to cross the bridge. So
Yeah,
they took care of the tank busters. So they should have two. Deplete from Beyond should have two as well. They just ended up taking care of different ones.
True, exactly. So Deplete from Beyond, they are swimming very low here. Looks like Rentari is grabbing one of some of these eel packs. We've seen most tanks pick up a bunch of eel packs before they engage the boss, just to amplify the DK damage onto the boss. Now, these eel packs can cause a lot of problems, especially with Necrotic, because the eel packs themselves, they leave a stacking bleed debuff behind, and on top of also applying Necrotic to the tank, they can be very dangerous, and this is why we see them using the Ring of Peace and using the AoE stuns and whatever else they have to not get the Necrotic on the tank, and they want to nuke them down as fast as they possibly can.
Yep, and I really like that pull out of Rentari. He made sure that he grabbed all of the mobs together, and part of the pathing is because of the uneven terrain and this last boss's room. They did an excellent job of making sure that everything was corralled together and everything slowly followed Rentari out of the water to avoid any sort of resets and then move into the boss. So it's that little bit of extra patience to make sure that you're able to outplay some of the possible issues that can happen with pathing. Very well played there by Rentari as he's kiting out that Blood of the Corruptor. Misty is there to support him as well. And overall, last boss dropped down to 66% in the very first phase. So Deplete from Beyond is looking extremely strong throughout their Shrine of the Storm run.
Man, and that looks scary. I mean, engaging this trash pack before they go into the other realm just to like use his charge. Risky, because if any sort of casts, of course, go through from these denizens, then the healer will just immediately go down. But he knows, of course, that the cast was already started by the boss, and therefore the cast from denizens is not going to finish, because both or the whole team actually is going to get into another realm, and therefore the trash pack is just resetting. So well done to abuse that mechanic here by Rentari, as the blood seems to be going down now. So the most dangerous part of the boss is over now with the Awaken mobs going down. You still have to deal with this middle pack with the 2 denizens and the tank one as well, which we've seen some teams struggle with, just because the tank one does do a lot of damage to the tank, on top of also having Necrotic. And of course, if you mismanage your interrupts, you can also just have some problems with your healers going down.
Yep. Speaking of, Bob dropping really low. Raz feeling the brunt of the Necrotic as he got 17 stacks and goes down. The rest of the team is soon to follow, as the boys are just falling apart here on Shrine of the Storm. Deplete from Beyond got out of their first intermission phase. They're taking their time, corralling all of the little eels together. Extremely well played by these guys. You're seeing, you know, a little bit of the stutter stepping from the eels as they try to navigate here, but they are well poised and primed to be taking this game as they grab the middle pack, all of the eels, every single trash pack in together. Let's see if they're able to burn this boss for the last 60% of its HP, because it's just falling apart right now.
And all the DKs are alive, so sometimes we see these kind of pulls with the Bloodlust and the Eels, and the DKs just go down immediately because they either draw aggro or they get hit by a tentacle, but not for Deplete from Beyond, as they have 0 deaths. What a clean run by them so far, as Volcanic is going to go down, so they're able to one-phase this. They still need 2% trash, so there's probably an Eel pack that they still have to do.
Yeah, if you see the Denizen in the back, he's lumbering along there.
Yeah,
he's taking
I
his
can
time.
see it now, the tank one, yeah. So
Yep,
you just
but
need to
one
finish off the
phase is set.
Denizen, and there we go. What a clean run by Deplete from Beyond. And yeah, they're winning against the boys 2-0.
That's right, they're 2 seconds slower than their time trial best.
Wow.
Absolutely wild. Deplete from Beyond has stepped up to such a ridiculous level in this week compared to their first performance. They're moving on and throughout the lower bracket.
Absolutely a clean run.